Welcome to today's webinar, the Robin to your Batman, integrating AI into your recruitment strategy. So let's get right to it. I'm Mallory Willsea, VP of Marketing and Demand Gen here at Element 451.
And hi, everyone. I'm Daniella Nordin, Senior Engagement Strategist here at Element 451.
So who is Element 451? We are an AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform. We have all the tools, integrations, and resources that a higher ed institution needs in order to manage engagement, enrollment, student success, recruitment, and beyond. We are really big into the AI side of things. You're going to hear that quite a bit over the course of the next hour, but we do believe that the combination of AI, student behavior data, and modern marketing automation is going to provide a college or university with that competitive advantage from recruitment to graduation and then past. So today's focus, we have broken this up into two parts. I'm going to take us through the first part. We're going to talk about AI in higher ed, look at the landscape, and do a quick dive into some of the trends, as well as what we see as higher ed's three biggest challenges. And then I'll turn it over to Daniella, who's going to kick us off by talking about the AI advantage. She's going to walk us through some real customer examples of how institutions are using AI today to create very tangible outcomes. And then we're going to actually pull up ChatGPT and dive into some prompt engineering. It'll be, I think, a nice marriage of both strategy and tactics over the course of the next hour. So, of course, we are talking about tech because we're talking about AI, but the whole point of the tech is the people. And so to just ground us, right? I moonlight as a fitness instructor. And so I always like to set an intention at the top of my fitness classes. So let this be our moment together to set our intention. Marketing, past, present, and future, is about people. Always has been and always will be. It's one of the most human professions in the world. And I know I can see on our attendee list today, we have a lot of marketers in this room. So we can take that deep inhale and exhale together. All right. So Bill Gates, I think we know who Bill Gates is. He is a man with no introduction necessary. He has cited two revolutionary moments in the history of technology during his lifetime. One was in 1980 when he saw a graphical user interface for the first time. And then the second was just last year when he watched GPT, the artificial intelligence model, get the highest score possible on the AP Bio exam. So just let that sink in for a moment, right? Gates, who is this pivotal player and has been an eyewitness to huge economic and societal shifts, from the personal computing industry to the rise of the internet. He sees AI as being just as significant, and in fact has described it as this before and after milestone. So without a doubt, the age of AI is here, but the age of AI has been around for a little while, right? We've all had our Alexas in our home for more than the last year. Why is GPT so significantly different? And the answer to that question is natural language. This is the game changer. Natural language is a very compelling interface. It is how we've been conversing with each other for thousands of years. So when you bring natural language into your technology, it actually allows us as users to pick up a tool and just instantly get value from it. And we believe that this is going to be the default way of using software in the future. A little earlier this year, Pew Research did a survey of the US population, and they found out that only about 58% of the US had heard of ChatGPT, which I was shocked because I feel like within the week of it coming out, the internet was abuzz. I forget that sometimes like I'm in like my zone or my silo, and the people that I'm interacting with might have adopted ChatGPT, but I have a feeling the group in this room, like we are the 3% here. Like we are the folks who have probably given ChatGPT a try and have already started using it maybe in our work environments. So actually, I do want to just fire up a quick survey to find out my suspicions. Are they true or not? And I'm going to get that going right now. On a scale of 1 to ChatGPT expert, how would you rate your ChatGPT skills, right? On the one end, is it the new fitness trend? Or maybe you are already like two peas in a pod and you even have your own secret handshake, or perhaps you're somewhere in the middle. We're going to give you just a couple more seconds to fill this out. All right, so it looks like most folks have taken the poll at this point. I'll share the results. I suspected something like this. Most of us are living somewhere in the middle. We've used it a few times, but we're waiting to get a little more comfortable with the tool, and there's still so much to learn. So let's keep on going. Hard truth, higher ed. We cannot treat AI like we did the internet. The pandemic exposed huge gaps in higher ed's slow adoption of digital everything. And like the internet, AI is being adopted far faster outside of higher ed than it is inside higher ed. The incredible growth of ChatGPT is certainly an indicator. AI is going to move even faster than the internet. So this means that we have a responsibility to be strategic and accelerate the adoption within our industry, or we risk being left behind. So why should we care, right? Let's actually connect this to some of the challenges that institutions are facing. And the first is a shortage of both talent and expertise. We know it's really hard to compete with the salaries and sometimes remote work that is offered by other industries. And what happens is our very best team members choose to leave, and then it's a challenge to fill their open positions. And so this results in this brain drain within our institutions. Our teams are lacking the expertise that they need to be successful. And with technology moving at such a rapid pace, this is compounding the difficulty of the staff that is currently in place to keep up with the latest trends and marketing techniques. So that knowledge gap hinders our ability to reach our students and constituents and then effectively engage them in meaningful ways. So when it takes weeks to respond to that inquiry, the campaign or the communication flow hasn't been refreshed in more than a year. Maybe the expertise isn't even there to get the right information available. So it leaves us with the question, how can we deliver on the stuff that students expect when we don't have the right personnel in place? And I've shared this next slide a number of times in some of our webinars this year, so I'll just mention it very quickly. This research from Huron and the Chronicle was just so eye-opening to me. It is wild that 8 in 10 higher ed leaders are reporting that their campuses have more open positions this year than last year, and about the same percent saying that they're having a harder time finding applicants to meet those requirements. What results is our employees are working longer and harder than ever, and that is immediately contributing to burnout because we have to take on those additional responsibilities. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge, we have the issue of lacking data and insights on our recruitment efforts. And that makes it very hard to evaluate the effectiveness of our strategies throughout the entire student journey. We know that data is complex and it is disparate, and there is no 360-degree view of student behaviors. And I think part of the problem is there's this proliferation of point solutions that either A, don't work, or B, aren't integrated with each other. And so if you can't measure it, you probably can't change it. And therefore, we can't determine what is and isn't working. So we're in the dark when it comes to optimizing our recruitment processes and maximizing on return on investment, and taking it a step farther, using data to actually identify student behaviors for personalization becomes challenging all the way to impossible. So about a year ago, we conducted a survey with Enrollify and released that at the beginning of 2023. And something that we found in that survey was pretty eye-opening. 35% of us are using 7 or more tools to get our job done in our MarTech stack, and 65% using 4 or more every single week, right? So I think that just underscores that the more tools that we layer on, the harder and harder it is to to get them to speak to each other and then to collate all the data to bring it together. All right, onward. This is the chaos that happens when we as admins are using 7 or more tools. Right? The student lands on the website, they expect an immediate interaction and response, they filled out a form, then they get a nurturing email and another one, and they text, but they don't get a reply. But then they get another email and they try to talk to somebody, but then they're playing phone tag and ultimately just waiting for their application information. It's chaotic, it's a mess. And this is what the student feels because we don't have access to the right insights. That leads me into the third challenge, our changing learner expectations. Students want quick, personalized, and efficient communications. And that's whether or not the student is 16, 36, 66. There used to be a day where we were like, these are millennial expectations. That is not the case anymore. These are just simply people expectations. And getting people the right information when they need it at the right time is paramount to success. So not only are these students applying to more institutions or sometimes getting instantly accepted thanks to direct admissions, they're expecting colleges to communicate with them like their favorite brands. So if we're struggling to meet those expectations due to these outdated recruiting and marketing tools and techniques, then we're really missing the mark. And that directly impacts our retention and our engagement. So the impact is that when students don't know where they always are in the process and what is next, that is going to cause them to either drop out or consider stopping out. And we do so much work on the front end to recruit these students that the retention and the ongoing engagement is just critical. But I know I'm sitting here just preaching to the choir. These problems have been consistent in higher ed for a long time, more than 15 years. And when we put them all together, they prevent campus-wide collaboration and personalization at scale and ultimately meeting those student expectations. But something has changed. AI is here, and we believe it is transformative. And we believe that the future is a segment of one, and that finally, after more than a decade of talking about how to achieve that, we finally have the right technology to provide us with the foundation to do it. So with that, Daniella, how can institutions use AI to their advantage?
This is so great and such a great lead up, because I am excited to share that we have use cases and examples for every one of those challenges or problems that Mallory mentioned. So I know that you all are dealing with staff burnout and turnover. I know you're all trying to keep up with these learner expectations. It's just know that you are not alone. You no longer have to make decisions in silos, because AI can and it has helped in every one of these instances. But I want to start just by talking about these learner expectations, because we know they're constantly changing. We know higher ed has never been known for being ahead of the curve. And our goal has always been to shift from that reactive approach to that proactive approach, right? But we talk about that, and it's easier said than done. And it's especially easier said than done when maybe the AI hasn't worked for you before, or it's lacking something. Our traditional experience with AI has left a little something to be desired. I'll be the first person to admit that I hit 0 over and over again to talk to a human, or I'm constantly typing agent, right? And you get stuck in this endless loop of, with these traditional chatbots, that when you're just trying to accomplish what should be a seemingly simple task. So our experience has been one where AI lacks competence, or maybe even worse, where AI lacks warmth and basic empathy, right? So what does this lead to? All of a sudden, we're feeling distrustful of technology, of AI. It isn't so much the robot overlords we're worried about taking over now. It's really just trying to figure out how to accomplish a task that should be seemingly simple. But as Mallory mentioned, ChatGPT really changed the game here. If you think about AI on this scale of warmth and competence, there's now tech out there that's highly competent, that it learns and grows as you give it more information. It's empathetic. The other day, Mallory and I were chatting, and I actually called GPT he. I have personified it because it feels like you're talking to a person. And that actually changes the way you interact with the tech. And this is huge for meeting student expectations, because using AI-powered chatbots that are trained on your institution's knowledge, similar to maybe what your institutional Wikipedia would be, or even standalone documents or PDFs that you upload, they provide these natural language responses to prospective student questions or even current student questions. They can handle hundreds, sometimes even more conversations at a time. They provide factually relevant and identical responses. And this means that a human advisor or a prospective student doesn't need to wade through web page after web page to find a deadline about a specific application type with low confidence or low trust that it's correct information. We know that this chatbot will answer that question for the student at a time when they need it and the answer that they really do need. So I know you're all thinking, yeah, that sounds really great, but Daniella, tell me how it's done. You got it. My friends at TVCC, they are a public community college in Athens, Texas. They have 4 regional campuses. They've got about 18,000 students. Yes, you know them from the Emmy-nominated Netflix documentary Cheer that Mallory and I are both huge fans of. So watch them. You will know how important they are, I think, to higher ed in general. But since 2016, they were experiencing these really sharp enrollment declines. They were struggling with trying to reach students beyond their physical campuses, right? And the college realized that they needed to switch up their approach. They needed to try something innovative. So they looked to AI to find ways to personalize that student recruitment journey. One of the things they did was they started with their communications. So from the very first touch point, from when that student fills out a form or attends an event or raises their hand to opt in to anything from TVCC, they started using AI to pre-build and implement these campaigns. And this was a game changer for a few reasons. Those messages are now based on behavioral triggers. So they focused in on website pages that were visited, links that were clicked, demographic data. And as TVCC gathered more information about these students, the better the responses were. And it's really changing your mind to this always on marketing strategy that it really makes students feel like TVCC knows them through every step of their journey and is communicating to them at the right time, with the right message. And I'm just gonna toggle over to show you all how TVC did this using some pre-built AI that we have in Element here. We have a tool called Copilot, which is our AI writing assistant within Element 451 that basically creates these campaigns for you. So imagine your TVCC, you're a team of 4, you've got 18,000 students that you're trying to reach with these enrollment declines. They can come right into Element and say, create a drip campaign for prospects for the next semester. Drive them to apply and personalize based on major. And full disclosure, I'm pulling a Food Network style here where you've got the chopped onions over here, and then we'll go over to the next screen where you see the final product. So I've got it pre-programmed here, but you'll see Copilot wrote the outline. It says, hey, this is what we recommend based on the knowledge that we have within your database in your school. This is the outline and campaign that I recommend. The first communication is going to be ignite interest. The second one is going to highlight the benefits. The third is going to address concerns like safety or some of those parent concerns, that empathy that we were talking about earlier that GPT has. And the fourth is going to create urgency about applying. I told it that sounded great to me and I wanted it to continue. So it searches the knowledge base to try and find the relevant information that we're talking about. And then it writes the communications and says, see where Element can take you. Here's the preview text. Here's the intro, the body. This sounds really great. But really where the magic happens is if we toggle over here and it builds the workflow for you. So you can see we've got the workflow here that's got the delays built in. Day 1, 1 hour. Day 2, we've got text messages, we've got SMS communications, we've got the final call to apply. So now all TVC had to do was add the right audience trigger and then activate the workflow, and they have saved themselves some endless amount of time here. So 15,000 students reached via those automated personalized workflows. We've got a 40% increase in messages sent during the week of rolling out an AI-powered chatbot. So let's talk about the fact that there's a 40% gap in students that we're reaching that we didn't talk to at all, right? So I think they were relieved and scared. And then really the stats that I think speak to the ultimate conversion here, an 18% increase in graduation rate over year, and a 940% increase in event attendance. So these event attendance invitations are a great reminder that message is resonating. Students want to hear more about TVCC, and that those messages are personalized enough that they're engaged and following up. So that's just one example that we have of meeting learner expectations. The next example I want to share is about these data insights and making decisions in data silos, which we all know are real. And my example here are my friends at Muhlenberg Graduate College. So Muhlenberg had a huge undertaking. They were integrating 2 colleges, an undergraduate adult learner program, and then the graduate college. And really what they wanted to do was bring their marketing in-house. They wanted to reduce their operational cost. They wanted more insight into the data that their outsourced marketing efforts were providing. So they took on this undertaking, they merged everything together, and what we provided was a natural language query for their data and operations that allowed them to have data and insights at their fingertips. So we talked a little bit about ChatGPT and how it's a natural language processor, how sometimes when I'm typing the questions, I think there's a person on the end here. Built in within our platform is a natural language query for data and insights. So you can see within our platform, we have insights. Most of you are familiar with this, and you can see that you can get pretty granular with what you can control by. But you're Muhlenberg Graduate School and you're in a meeting, and all of a sudden somebody's asking you, hey, we need to reallocate funds to market the biology program or the workforce development program. What data can you tell me that where should I reallocate my funds? You can come right here. We've got some pre-built questions that say, hey, here are the top 10 cities for prospects. And all of a sudden it's pulling up this data, visually appealing in a chart. And you can say, hey, according to our data, we need to spend more money marketing to the Dallas area, or we need to spend more money, or let's reallocate the funds that we put into Albuquerque into Edison County. You can search for simple questions. Like the goal here is to ask a question the way you would ask a question to a person. So you can type in a simple question and you can toggle based on variables. This is super important for a couple of reasons, right? The first is that, yes, you can make those decisions on the fly. But the second is because now Muhlenberg is saving money, right? So what they did, or what they were able to do, was the first thing was to combine multiple applications into one logic-based application. This is huge because now these 2 departments have visibility into stats like application complete rate or time to application complete, and they can make decisions based off of those stats that they're sharing in real time. The other benefit isn't really data, but it is an important one to mention. It's a seamless user experience, right? So this student doesn't have to toggle between applications. The staff doesn't have to find which application they applied to, whether it's correct or incorrect, and reassign things. So there's a number of reasons why combining and using logic and rules and strategy really make a difference. The other reason is that they were able to cut costs in significant areas. So by integrating these departments, the technologies, using the same technology, they were able to make decisions about their digital spend. So there's a 26% decrease in cost per impressions year over year, right? They're saving money, they're able to allocate those resources, and you can use it to get more visibility on your return on investment, which is what this 249% increase in RFI form conversions does, right? It allows people it all shows that like accessible data pays off, and that they've made a smart investment and move here, because in 1 year, they have now 250% more leads, essentially, which is huge, right? All right. Last one here for staff productivity here. We have TVCC, who we talked about, that AI powered chatbot in personalized communications. But I'm going to switch gears and talk to you about my friends at Forsyth Tech and how they used an AI powered chatbot for staff productivity. So, our friends at Forsyth Tech are in North Carolina. They have 150 different programs across how many? 9 campuses in North Carolina, 22,000 students. But as we all know in higher ed, there was a perfect storm of things that changed for them recently. They got a new president, and with a new president comes a new strategic plan. And with a new strategic plan comes a new mission statement. And with a new mission statement comes a reorg. We've all been there. So Forsyth they changed their organizational structure, which is actually, I think, pretty innovative. And I haven't seen anything like this since then. But they created a new student success model that really was aimed to eliminate some barriers for accessibility for their students. But now admissions and records, recruitment, K through 12, innovation, marketing, student care, and advising are all under one huge team and department. The model eliminated silos, which we love to see, but you can imagine that created a need for staff productivity and efficiency. So they invested in an AI-powered chatbot to work smarter, not harder. They started with building a knowledge base, that institutional Wikipedia that I mentioned, focused on areas around that big department. So they gave it information about admissions, about recruitment, about financial aid. They positioned that chatbot as the first line of defense. So any questions that came in from prospective students, from current students, came to the chatbot first. If the chatbot couldn't answer it, then it got triaged to a human and to another person, which is wonderful. Now, I think that you all have seen BoltBot, but I am always happy to share BoltBot in action too. And I preloaded a few things here too. So this is our demo site, and you can see that we've got some conversations starting here, and we've got some last conversations. So I just asked it straight up, I'd like to learn more about your majors, and it automatically gives you the majors that are listed within the institutional Wikipedia that we have here. What's nice is that I can now go and say, I want to meet with an advisor about, let's just make sure that biological sciences. So imagine you're a student who can spell advisor correctly. Imagine you're a student, you come to this chatbot, you want to learn about the majors that Forsyth Tech has. I want to book a meeting with an academic advisor. This Bolt bot, this AI-powered bot, can answer a question for you about what types of majors there are and can automatically put you in touch with an advisor. So let's go ahead and say that this is application assistance. And it will pull up the times that are available to meet, essentially eliminating the need for a human to intervene to answer a question that you're going to get 100 times. And it gives you the times that are available. I select a time, and then I would book another meeting with my advisor. Now, all of this sounds really good too, right? Let's talk about some of the results that Forsyth Tech saw. The first week of rolling out this chatbot, a 14% decrease in calls. I know we've all been at the other end of that telephone call. So let's just talk about that first line of defense, being able to triage those calls so that this team can now focus on sending out those personalized messages, reading applications, setting up those advising appointments to be able to talk to those students and answer those questions. Between June and September of just this year, over 5,000 questions answered by the chatbot. That's also huge. Of those 5,000, 560 were handed off to people. That's 10%. So think about the chatbot answering 90% of prospective and current student questions and really getting your team to focus on that 10% that's going to be a good use of their time and resources. And then the ultimate stat is this 7.5% increase in enrollment from fall 2019 to fall 2022. I know I don't have to tell people that a big thing happened between those years, a pandemic, COVID, and that Forsyth was one of the only institutions who were really able to they didn't see that enrollment cliff or that drop off during the pandemic, which is huge. And that tells us that the staff were able to really maximize their efforts. They were able to answer student questions, get them the help they needed, register them for classes seemingly efficiently, and maximizing that. So now I know you're all sold and you're like, tell me how to do it. So Mallory,
Yes.
tell them how to do it.
Sure. We recognize that we have a mix of people who are joining us today, some customers, some who aren't. And we want to make sure we promise both strategy takeaways and tactics. And we want to make sure that we are leaving you with things that you can go and do within ChatGPT or Claude or Bard, your favorite AI tool of choice, to get immediate impact. And as we discussed, the future is having AI baked into the tools that you're already using, but obviously we can't control the speed at which our MarTech stack is going to implement AI. So what we can control is our preparation for it and the ability to use those free tools that are already at our fingertips. So the better you get at prompt engineering, the more productive you're going to be, the more attractive to the next employer you'll probably be. And as we noted earlier, only 3% of us are using this tool at work right now. So even 1 year in, ChatGPT has well over 100 million users, but so many of us are still stuck in beginner mode. And we hope that 10 to 15 minutes from now, you are going to start to feel unstuck. So, just going through some of the really basics first. If you are on the path to wanting to master ChatGPT, these are 5 very immediate use cases that I suspect anybody here who has to write content, communicate, or do marketing activities would get some immediate value out of. So, let's think about a use case where, say, maybe you are given a letter from a dean of those biological sciences that Danielle was talking about earlier. And you're given this letter that this dean wrote, and they want you to send it out to prospective students about a new program within that college. You're going to take that content, and it probably isn't ready to send immediately, right? We know that we have to take sometimes this really academic language and kind of drill it down to what our target audience is going to resonate with. So first and foremost, it's likely you might want to change the tone of that email. So just literally copy pasting the content that you're given, putting it into that tool like ChatGPT, and telling the tool to help you adjust the tone for the parameters of your audience. That's quick and easy. That can save you 20, 30 minutes of work of having to do that yourself. Continuing this line of thinking, imagine now you've already preloaded that content in, right? So if you keep working within that same chat, you can continue to prompt ChatGPT to say, all right, now create some subject lines for me. And you can give it some best practices for what works for your audience to help the tool nail it the first time. Then you might ask it for some personalization opportunities, right? You might tell it what your desired outcome is, and then say, personalize this email based off of these different student behaviors or demographics that you know you're going to be sharing the email with. It can also give you creative direction. So perhaps you are looking to go take some photos around campus to support these communications. ChatGPT can help you ideate on what that imagery might be, or a bigger kind of creative strategy for dropping information about new academic programs. And then one of my favorites is just simple idea generation. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I just go to ChatGPT and have it help get me unstuck, right? So if I'm sitting on this letter from the dean, I might ask it some questions to say, what are some other ways that I could repurpose this content? Or how might I make this communication more effective to stand out in a crowded inbox? So this next slide is not pretty, right? But it's supposed to be usable. And the goal here is Daniella and I just sat down and brainstormed 13 different ways to help you unlock your creativity within ChatGPT. Because now that we have been educating higher ed on prompt engineering for almost a year, what we consistently find is it's not about the lack of expertise or the lack of ability to prompt ChatGPT. It's just sometimes having the aha moment of, oh, I can ask it to help me do that. I never thought of that before. I have just heard that time and time again throughout the past year. So we are going to leave you with these 13 different ideas, everything from training it on your brand's tone and voice to analyzing newly published research that might be coming out of your institution and bringing it down to a reading level, and maybe even going as far as creating a whole social campaign to help promote it to your audience, all the way to reverse engineering content, drafting agenda outlines for your meetings, etc. So you can enjoy reading down through this one when you get access to the slide deck. Two more quick kind of foundational tips that are just going to instantly help you boost your prompts and allow you to get better outputs from ChatGPT, or again, insert your favorite generative AI tool. Chained prompts is when you build on your prompts. Now, I could ask ChatGPT to do 15 things all at once, but the tool, just a conversation with a human, is always better when there's some back and forth exchange, right? And so if you can give it some information and then it comes back, and then you ask it to do the next thing, and then it comes back, right? So like envision this chained prompting back with our example of the letter from the dean, right? If you think about that use case, you can see how maybe this chained prompting is going to help you generate the best content. And of course, you can always add your revise this or try agains or whatever to help you really land it. The second kind of more, this is like your 201 example, is super prompting. I'll say like I really try to super prompt every single time because the quality of the output is so much better. Always tell ChatGPT what the role is, right? That's the pro tip. If you want it to be a social media expert, tell it to. If I was working on some podcasting stuff, so I was like, you have been podcasting for 10 years and you are an expert, or maybe you want it to act like a world-class CMO at a Fortune 500 company. Whatever that role is, define it up front, and that will have a significant impact on the quality of the tool's outputs. From there, you make sure to give it the result you're looking for, some context about it, the intent, the goal that you have for the communication. And then if you need to give it constraints, make sure you add that in too. ChatGPT tends to be a little verbose. We share that quality. So whenever you do know that you have a word count that you're trying to hit or a best practice, giving it some constraints can be really huge. Now, both of these last two slides come from the viral ChatGPT cheat sheet that we released earlier in the year. I am going to drop a link to it directly in the chat right now, but you can always just QR code scan it as well if you're looking for it. So let's actually move over to ChatGPT. We have two use cases that we are excited to talk you through. First will be around admitted student yield, and then we will look at optimizing a travel itinerary, right? We very much build this webinar as a recruitment focus, so we wanted to think about use cases that would be highly relevant to somebody in an admissions or a recruitment marketing role today. So I am actually going to shift over and start to share my screen, and we will prompt ChatGPT with some activities here. And now, just so you know, every prompt that I'm about to paste into ChatGPT lives in the slide deck, so you'll get access to that as well. So let's kick this off. Admitted student yield is our use case. And what I am asking ChatGPT to do is act as a higher ed enrollment expert, right? So there we go. I've given it a role. And I'm asking it for some strategies for admitted student yield. What are some effective marketing strategies for building relationships with accepted students and promoting Element University? So you can see ChatGPT is working its magic right now. And what is it telling us? It's giving us a number of strategies, everything from engaged communication, admitted student days, online webinars and virtual tours. And then it's going into my next prompt, right? I asked it for those effective email marketing strategies. This is pretty good. Now, I wouldn't say this is rocket science, right? But in about 15, 20 seconds, ChatGPT created this whole list for me that that it would have just like the amount of time it would have taken me to type this myself, it would have taken longer. So it did that initial brainstorming for us, right? And this list might cause us to see something that says, oh, and, right? Yes, and this other thing, or this one's not quite going to work for me. So here's your ideation. Now, let's have it actually suggest some email templates or examples to build off of that last prompt where we said we wanted effective email marketing strategies for promoting the institution. It gave us 10 really great things, right? Any marketer here would probably agree with this list. So now we're saying, can you actually suggest some templates for us? Give us some examples. And he's so kind, Daniella. Of course. So here's 3 email templates, right? Now, if I wanted 5 email templates, I could go back and edit this and say, suggest 5, right? The more specific, always the better. But today we got 3. And as you can see, ChatGPT is a little verbose, right? We might actually have wanted to give it a constraint to cut that down, but I was curious what it was going to give us. We have a welcome email, we have an engagement email for events, and a reminder email ahead of deadline decisions, right? And these are formatted really well. It's included the personalization tokens to make it really easy to migrate into a CRM. But we're not going to stop there, right? Now we've got our emails and we're doing chained prompting here. So we're continuing to build on. Now I want the SMS campaign to keep the students engaged. And because Element University is really fun and our brand voice and tone allow us to use emojis, I have instructed it to do that. I've said no hashtags though. That's a step too far for this SMS campaign. Here we go. It's generated again. I didn't tell it how many, but it has generated for me 7 texts that I could easily migrate into a workflow. It's used the emojis. It's continued to use the personalization tokens. And in fact, as I'm looking through this, because I didn't know what ChatGPT was going to give me, you could do this 20 times. You might get 20 different but similar responses. This order actually makes sense to me too, like a welcome followed by a virtual tour, or student ambassadors are here if you have questions. Like this is a very sequential, like this sequence just makes sense to me. Continuing on, right now we can have it write a detailed marketing plan. So we've been prompting it. This single chat is learning over time. And my pro tip to you is, especially if you're thinking about paying for ChatGPT 4, get one account and give your entire team access to it. Because you can see on the sidebar here, my whole marketing team has access. And so I can be working in this chat and then hand it over to my colleague because I'm out of the office on Friday and have her keep working in this same chat and continuing to build on the training that I have already invested right here. And you can even change the name of the chats on the side so that you can really easily go back and find them. Now, as we've been talking, right, remember I asked it to write that detailed marketing plan, and voila, it's gone in, it's thought about all the key channels that I might want to communicate through. It's even gone as far as giving me an evaluation and metric ideas. It's plotted out the timeline, and it's even given me a budget. Thank you, ChatGPT. Now, am I going to copy paste this and go hand it to my VP or my CMO tomorrow? Probably not, but it's done. It's taken that like blank page syndrome off the table, right? It's given me that first round. Now, Daniella, we're going to turn it back over to you. Folks, there are 2 additional bonus prompts for this use case that you will get access to in the slide deck. But I do want to make sure that Danielle has plenty of time to show you this second use case around doing optimized travel itineraries. Because I can say, as an admission counselor, I would have dreamed like it would have been so incredible if I would have had a tool to optimize my travel territory. So over to you, Daniella.
Yeah, thank you, Mallory. And Mallory says that because we were chatting at one point and she said, I was an admissions counselor. I really want to think about how I would have used this back in the day when we were kids. And she said, I wish I had something that would have optimized my travel itinerary. This was my region. These were the schools I was visiting, but how could I prioritize which schools to go to, how much time I needed in between travel, or what even was the most efficient route to take. So I said, I think we can do that. So a couple of pro tips here. ChatGPT 4 just released a feature where you can upload data files, PDFs, and it will scan and it will read for you. If you're not using the ChatGPT 4 and you're still using the free version, you can still use the prompts that we have in the guide, because the first prompt is to provide an overview of the data that you have provided ChatGPT. So I've uploaded the PDF and I am asking it, can you provide me with a brief overview of the high school visitation data that I've provided, including those key variables and what information is recorded? So it will scan the file and it will give a summary. But here it is finished searching the PDF files. It's giving the personal information, school ID, social security number, demographics. This is the file that I have given ChatGPT to learn. I then said, okay, here's your role. You are an admissions counselor and you're recruiting for a college. Using this data, create a list of high schools that I should visit. So now it's giving me the list of high schools that are on the data that I have supplied. And it says they've been mentioned in this data set. That's great, but how's that different from anything that I could get like looking at that data? I'm going to ask it of the high schools with known locations, because this is only as good as the data as you put in. You're only going to get as good data that you're going to put out here. Of the high schools with known location, create an itinerary that optimizes my time. Recruiting for my college between these schools, include the location, and include the proximity. So this is a really good example of that chain prop. Here's the role, here's the goal, and here's the constraints that you need. So it's going to go ahead and map out. Let's start in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and these are the schools that you want to visit. Let's go to Asheville next. Here's a couple of other New York or a couple of other North Carolina areas, and then it's going to switch over to New York, Westbury, and Rochester. Why does it have North Carolina and New York? Okay, so what's the most efficient route or schedule that I should follow? I have not been an admissions counselor, but it feels like 5 schools in one day may feel like a lot. So I gave it another constraint and said, if I visit 3 to 5 schools each day, how many business days is this going to take? And it comes back out with a sample itinerary. Day 1, go to Raleigh. Day 2, finish up those 2 other schools in Raleigh. Day 3, you're going to go to Nashville. You're going to need a travel day between North Carolina and New York. That's going to be your day 4 to travel, and then start in Westbury. And I like this too. If there are additional schools that are not listed in your data set, maybe you want to take a look at those, and they can be added here because you have time, because there's only one. And then you're going to move over to Rochester. Another pro tip, you can further optimize. So I said, okay, further optimize this list by eliminating the schools with the lowest number of enrolled students. So one of the things that picked up when it analyzed that data is that I had put in enrolled students by schools. It's going to come back and say, hey, here's that ranking of enrolled students by high school. These are the schools that you should eliminate here. So it's not worth going to Bismarck. It's not worth going to Panther, because you've got the lowest number of enrolled students there. So you can use each of those prompts that we have suggested, build it out, further optimize, know that you can further optimize within your ChatGPT instance as well.
Awesome. All right. So this guide is truly your blueprint. And so I'm going to drop the link to it in the chat as well, or you can just hit that QR code. But this is an executive level 40-page guide that is pretty hot off the press. We just dropped this a couple weeks ago. And within the guide, we explain in plain language the types of AI that offer the greatest potential for our industry. We go deep into how AI can unburden us, especially from things like repetitive tasks and just those crazy student experiences that are very disconnected. But it also should serve as a way to start building a culture of AI within your institution. We are going to be doing an entire webinar series that will help break this guide up into more bite-sized chunks, because like I mentioned, it is 40 pages long. The first of those sessions will be in just about about a month on November 29th. So keep an eye out for that. Since you are here today, you will get a email when we release registration for that. But it will be a whole series that we will do. And as Daniella is also sharing, within that AI guide is a checklist for selecting AI technology partners. We have heard throughout this past year that it's a little bit of the Wild West right now, and no one's quite sure, right? Like everybody's saying they've got AI, but how do we actually evaluate what makes sense for us and what is the good AI built on open AI's technology versus the type of AI that Daniella spoke about that lacks warmth and competency, right? So we've tried to put a checklist together to help you make those decisions better. And with that, thank you all so much. We are really close to the top of the hour, but like I mentioned before, we're going to stick around and answer your questions. Now, Daniella, I do actually have a handful of questions that have come in, mostly around the AI functionality within Element 451. So I think it makes sense for me to toss these in your direction. Doug is wondering, this was when you were sharing Copilot and Bolt Bot, right? And speaking to how the tool knows, right, where the student is at in the process and can deliver it relevant information like the upcoming appointment times and things, right? How? Doug's question is how? Like, where does the information actually reside that the AI is querying to create those messages and communications in Copilot or pull that information out for BoltBot?
Yeah, and the answer is really in two places. The first is a knowledge base within Element 451. So we talked about creating that institutional wiki. Within Element, you can upload sources of truth that are your website, custom answers, PDFs, or file documents. You can essentially control what information you're giving the AI within Element 451 to create that institutional knowledge base. So that's the first one. Curate smartly is what I will say to you, because I think we all know sometimes our websites can get a little sprawling. So I think the urge is to put in a URL that is your entire .edu. Start small, curate small, focus on those process heavy, those FAQs, those prospective student questions, and really fine tune, because it's going to learn as it goes and it's going to give that information. And then the second part of that question about appointments and the next step that it takes, using Element holistically and the features and the modules that we have, like the appointment feature or the event feature, it pulls in a student's contact record, a 360-degree view, right? If you've given information and set up your appointments modules and your appointment features, that you have your categories set up, the BoltBot knows, and that AI knows where to pull that information from and how to set that up. So it's really two answers, content on one and sort of functionality on the other. But great question, Doug.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I actually think Daniella just answered your question as well. Daniella, that was about, can you direct Copilot to query specific information inside the knowledge base, outside the knowledge base?
Yes.
Is it going to comb it all every single time?
And actually, Jeremy, it's recommended that you do. So like what Mallory shared about those constraints and about that prompting, yes, give it constraints, because it's going to be better the more specific you are, the more direction you give it, and it will take a lot less sort of editing onus off you on the back end. Yes, tell it where it is in the knowledge base, or if this is admissions, or if you're using tags, absolutely use that pro tip.
Debbie's wondering if Copilot can also build in recommended tasks for future students that need more personalized follow-up.
I don't know if it could do the tasks, and that's a great question. I hope that our product team is listening. But what it can do is create communication reminders. So if you want to create SMS texts that say, hey, you need to complete this task, or student, we're rooting for you, or we're encouraging you to complete, you only have 3 tasks left, you can do that. As far as creating the actual task and assigning it to somebody, don't think we're there yet, though I wouldn't be surprised if that was direction we were heading. But it can send out reminders and communications to those students for those open tasks and items that it does have on their application and on their checklist.
Awesome. And then what I believe is our last question for today comes from Kevin, who is in the process of implementing Element 451 and is wondering if Copilot has any integrations with the application to help. It sounds like he and his team are creating that application from scratch within the tool.
Oh, hi. I think I know Kevin, actually. It's nice to see you. Copilot cannot build this application logic based this way, but you can ask it for recommendations on how to. Does that make sense? That's a workaround is by saying, hey, if this is our prospective student, these are the majors and programs that we have, maybe give some recommendations for how you would do this. You can also use ChatGPT. We're talking about, yes, there's some baked in AI tools to Element. There's also free resources out there that will give you that starting scratch pad to work from. So it may not be able to actually build, the robots aren't quite there yet, but it could give you a pretty good roadmap. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about this. I would love to take an institution's application, drop the whole thing into ChatGPT and
Yes.
ask the tool to help optimize it, right? Get rid of redundant questions because we know they're in there.
Yes.
Or even ask ChatGPT, like, estimate how long it would take for somebody to fill this out. My goal is it should be less than an hour. What would you cut from this in order to achieve that goal? Or how would you refine it to make it more user friendly? I bet that there is a lot of interesting prompts that you could put into Chat GPT to help optimize the application process.
Yeah. And especially
Yeah.
we talk so much about education accessibility and
Mm.
making education accessible to different types of learners and expectations. Ask it straight up, what is a barrier here on this application that a student could not complete this application? I bet you're right, Mallory. It would have a ton of good answers.
Or, sorry, we're just going to keep
Yes.
yes anding here because this is what happens when Danielle and I get together. You could pull the data from your
Yes.
application over time and ask ChatGPT or whatever tool, maybe Insights Q with an element, to analyze where students get stuck the most. What
Yes.
is the question that has the highest drop off rate, right? And then optimize the right. Like this is like good survey optimization, like move things around or adjust how the questions are being asked.
Yes. Excellent
Love
use
it.
case. We're doing that. We're doing that for you, Kevin, when we build the application that we'll put, you'll be our beta tester.
Love it. We've committed now. All right. I hope this Q&A was helpful. If you ever want to reach out to Daniella or me and just ideate on all things AI, we are here for you. So we'll look forward to continuing this conversation after this webinar. And we definitely hope we will get a chance to see you, if not at AMA, on a future webinar. Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you, Daniella. It was
Thank
fun.
you, Mallory. I know. Let's do it
All
again
right.
sometime.
Back to eating Halloween candy. Here we go.
Bye, everyone.
See y'all. Have a great day.